Welcome to Veritas. I'm your host, Adam Colazetti, and I'm here to guide you on a meditative adventure like no other. Join me and lose yourself in your imagination as we travel the outer reaches of the cosmos, quest for powerful talismans, and explore the inner realm of your subconscious. What might you find along the way? But be warned, fair traveler, this path is not for the faint of heart. On this path, of one thing I am certain, dragons be here. Are you ready? So how we're going to begin is you're going to sit comfortably, however that means to you. Could be legs crossed, could be sitting in a chair, whatever it is, sit somewhere comfortably that you feel relaxed and comfortable. And you're going to close your eyes and you're going to take 3 deep breaths. Deep breath in, count to 4. Deep breath out, count to 4. And each time you exhale, you're going to try and relax your body a little bit further. So you're going to inhale, pause, exhale, pause. So as you're doing this and you're relaxing, it's in those pauses between breaths where we're going to go. That is where your creativity meets your imagination, meets your subconscious. So let's see what awaits you in the spaces between breaths. The universe abides, it waits. It has no patience, for it does not need any. It simply is what gods and men imagine it to be. But there are times when that imagination grows. These are times of both beauty and chaos, and are so full of wonder that it makes the whole journey worth it, even if the end of that journey is difficult to see. The great powerful being stood alone on a rocky moon at the end of time. The universe was so quiet here. The sky was pure darkness, as the universe had expanded to the point that no stars were visible to each other any longer. It was a good place to think. His encounter with the other being still took his breath away. He wanted nothing more than to seek out the other being. Her grace and beauty were beyond words. He had never known peace except in those eyes, and the fact that he could be wrong about his own nature troubled him. In a moment of frustration, he cast the memory aside and renewed his commitment to action. The adversary was nowhere to be found, and this scared him more than he cared to admit. Somewhere, buried deep just beyond his reach, there was a truth that eluded him, and finally that frustration collided with his sense of loss, and in a fit of rage he cried out, "Where are you?" This cry shook the heavens, and the moon he stood on trembled and shook and spun out of its orbit as it sailed into the deep parts of space. There was quiet only for a moment, and then the time and space began to bend. The sky changed. Exploding stars reformed, and the universe shrunk as time was bent backward. The great powerful being smiled in anticipation. The adversary had come at last. The untamable being drifted for a time. She should have been content. The amount of passion and rage and purpose she had absorbed far exceeded anything she'd ever encountered, and by all accounts she should be satisfied, but she wasn't. She longed for more. It was as if a part of her she never knew existed had been opened and was now filled with a void that could not be filled save by one. Still, freedom was her nature. She was unbounded and untamed, and that simple fact defined her very existence. Yet to feel such purpose was intoxicating. She yearned for it in a way that defied explanation. It had never occurred to her that she was missing something, and if she truly had found a missing piece, why had she allowed herself to drift away? Her previous existence called to her, yet now that she was here, it seemed dull. The untamable being existed in the present moment, and therefore emotion was laid bare before her, leading her to the inevitable conclusion that there was no choice but to return and seek out the other, regardless of what it meant. The great powerful being stood upon a desert red planet, a fitting battleground. The adversary silhouetted atop the cliffs. Although it was too far to see, they locked eyes. He tensed. This scene had played out uncountable times before, and as every time before, he was sure this would be the final encounter. But then a gust of wind blew just so, and for the first time the great powerful being noticed how the dust swirled, creating patterns in the air as it was dispersed by a cool breeze. In that moment, he realized just how fleeting the universe really was. For all his power and history of creation and destruction, he realized he'd never truly stopped to appreciate any of his creations. What then was the point? What did it all matter? Meanwhile, on the cliff, the adversary began to glow with power. The untamable being stretched out her senses, and now that she knew he existed, it did not take her long to find the great powerful being. She went to him, gleefully excited, and found herself in a red desert, but stopped short. She sensed a duality. The great powerful being was there, yet also atop the cliff. She sensed hate and rage and power, and it was beautiful, but she also sensed curiosity and passion, and that too was beautiful. In that instant, she saw what the great powerful being could not. She saw the war he waged against himself, and yet she saw hope. There was a glimmer in the darkness, and she reached for it. The great powerful being watched the dust settle, and for the first time he felt a warm glow inside of him. He felt the need to create for the sake of creating rather than for the sake of accomplishing. The power around him changed from the hot red of battle to a cool green. The adversary was forgotten, inconsequential. He stood in silent bliss as he commanded the world to grow. All around him, green plants burst forth from the desert soil. Great trees burst forth and spread their branches. Water rained down from the heavens, and life took hold, so beautiful. A single tear drifted down his cheek as he saw the true power of creation in the present moment. As he did so, he saw her. She stood standing beneath the shadow of the jungle he had built, and he felt her presence. He realized she had been there guiding his hand, and together they had created this place, this Eden. That perfect moment would change his world, as love firmly took hold of his entire being. But it was not to last, as the adversary, enraged by this unusual behavior, saw it as trickery, and unleashed all of his might with the power to end all. The untamable being saw her beloved shift. She saw his eyes change, and love took hold as surely within her as within him. And that moment was the most perfect moment the universe had ever known. Then she saw the fire and carnage that was coming as the adversary unleashed hellfire. She saw her beloved uncaring and willing to give it all up. Her choice was not really a choice. For the first time in her existence, the intensity of purpose filled her, and she understood the truth of love. It was never about what she was willing to give. It was about what she was willing to give up. She willed her carefree and flowing essence into a shield and wrapped the great powerful being in an embrace as the power unleashed burnt the world around them. Amidst the hellfire, their eyes locked as they danced one final time. Such power backed by a will such as the adversary slowly but surely wore her down, and holes in her spirit began to appear. It started as light shining through and grew until great cracks shone through her essence. But never for a moment did she break from the dance or lose his gaze. Even when he cried out, her last feeling was gratitude for one last dance. The great powerful being saw his beloved torn apart before his very eyes. Her essence, once whole and part of a divine intelligence, was scattered into the universe like dust, and like dust it was quietly blown away. When it was over, he stood in a crater of death. The entire world had burned. The adversary, exhausted from such an effort, kneeled in the distance trying to recover. He thought he had won. The great powerful being screamed, and reality itself bent around him. Rage as he'd never known consumed him, and each step ripped the world to pieces as he flew at the adversary. Over and over they tumbled in violence like the universe had never known, shattered galaxies and tore holes in time and space. At last, the adversary lay unmoving at the world at the end of time. The great powerful being stood over him, chest heaving, and screamed. It was then that the adversary's head turned and his face was finally revealed. All his rage vanished in an instant as the great powerful being saw the truth. For the first time he truly saw. The adversary was himself. He had been fighting himself. He and he alone was responsible for the death of his love. His own arrogance and ego had blinded him, and she saw right through it. She had sacrificed herself. It was then that the great powerful being was humbled, and he knew the truth of love that had been hunting him. The truth of love was sacrifice. Love was what made the impossible possible, and love came from sacrifice. It came from letting go of who you were before and giving up your arrogance and sense of self-importance. He had done that too late. Gradually, time rolled backwards and stars reappeared in the sky. He knew not how long he stood there, but it wasn't until he snapped his head around in surprise as he smelled the faintest scent of roses. She was out there somewhere, and he sensed her sacrifice had given birth to new life. There were new powers in the universe now, 13 to be exact. The universe had changed and the truth had been given to him, and if he closed his eyes, he could smell the faint scent of roses. He would never be blind again, and his eyes burnt fire for a moment before leaving empty sockets. As a reminder and as a penance, the blind man was born. He would find her again. The question was, what would he be willing to sacrifice to do it? The answer was everything. Hello and welcome to Veritas. We're here to talk about truth. Well, whose truth? Hopefully your truth. In this episode, we are finishing off the Mars and Venus saga, the masculine and feminine. And with me, I have Meagan Fettes. Thanks so much for coming, Meagan.
Thanks, Adam. This has been amazing.
It's been a journey. We've gone through some deep conversation and had some very profound conversations. So if you haven't checked out the 3 episodes before this, definitely check it out, because I think the last one, brings forth a lot of emotions. It's a bit tragic, I think. So how did you like the ending?
It was powerful. And again, left me in the state of curiosity. Almost like an internal unsettling, but in the best way.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Yeah. And I love the idea of that sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice in order to be in that space of deep love?
I like that. All right, well, before we get into it,
okay,
let's pick a card. We had the Blackbird last time, which was really interesting.
So fitting. Let's do this one. Okay. Oh, the hare.
Ooh, the hare.
The hare.
Okay.
All right. So I'm curious what this one is all about. It even has some Stonehenge in the back, which is super cool.
So you'll dig this. Rebirth and balance. Why not?
Gosh.
Why not?
Right?
Why not be crazy?
Oh, that's hilarious.
The hare is a creature of the goddess, the moon, and the night, and represents the dawn, brightness, and the east. It is the most adept at shape-shifting. It represents intuition. There you go.
Wow, if that's not fitting,
right?
I don't know what is.
I feel like it's like I drew the card and then wrote the story.
Yeah, because it really comes back down to that shape-shifting. Not in the way that we think we need to as human beings, I need to fit here in order to have this outcome or in order to appease this persona that I'm putting out there. But rather, what are we willing to release in order to shift our shape into who we're truly meant to be?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this idea of, of course, the untamable being, the feminine being, is more present, so realizes that she needs to go find the other, and then of course he's just figures it out, right? He just kind of figures it out, I don't know. I like this idea that there's this beautiful moment where it's perfect.
Yes.
Right? And it's very peaceful. I think, anyways, when they're creating an Eden or jungle or whatever. Right? But then, of course, it's not meant to last. How did you feel when? I don't know. Could you see it coming? Could you predict what was coming?
No, which was, I think, what kind of left me in that state of inner uncertainty, because I was like, whoa, did not see that sacrifice coming and that loss of self. But then in contemplating it here for the last couple minutes, it's how we do that unintentionally and how we can do that intentionally. Right? I can only speak from my own experience, but there's been times where I'm so focused on a certain outcome or I need to achieve these things that there is this sacrifice of self in an unintentional way. And then all of a sudden, after all of it's done, right, when that being, that all-powerful being is on top of the adversary, which turns out to be himself, in my own experience, being like, when that moment happens and being like, oh, wait a second, what is it that I let go of in pursuit of this?
I love that. And I love this idea that, you can be filled with such strong emotion, and then in a moment with realization, they can be gone.
Yes.
And, that maybe implies something about the nature of it and how you hold on to things or something like that. But one thing I was contemplating as I was reading it is, the one being is sort of dispersed in the universe, but are they truly gone? Like the other one has changed. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, shifted forms, right? Created a little bit of a different state of energy.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious, like in your own experience, how has that shown up in your life?
Well, I guess, it's like your greatest strengths are also your greatest weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
So for me, when I think of the all-powerful being and the ability to create and move things and get things done and shape the universe around him, I can relate to that. That's a strength, I think, something that I'm good at. But at the same time, the challenge then is to be more present, right? If my wife's watching this, she'd be like, right? So, but so this idea of when you do have a really present moment or whatever, it is that much more beautiful, I think, for me to embrace that, because I am much more naturally in that like intense sort of anxious about the future type state of mind.
Well, and I think it's the state that we have kind of been conditioned to be in more often than not, right? And what I love about the energy now is we're shifting. I don't know if you've noticed that, but like the whole collective or population is shifting into this state of like, well, what if?
Right?
What if we shifted this a little bit? Like, what if we didn't push so hard? What would happen?
Well, and I think that's the idea, right? The what if. It can only be possible if you imagine it, right?
Yeah.
And the universe just abides. The universe is like, sure, right?
Totally.
So, if you think about it that way, it's almost daunting how much power you have. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't know. I did feel like, obviously the end of the story, there's a little bit of Romeo and Juliet inspiration in there. But, I think tragedy, there's a reason why in story it can be so profound in its impact. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, and often with tragedy brings new opportunity.
Right?
It's that whole idea of like destruction and creation. Mm-hmm. The two go hand in hand. We can't create something new without destroying something else. It's just the nature of how we exist. Mm-hmm. Even the universe, right? Like how you kind of talked about these experiences of the destruction of her state of self, if you will, to now becoming a different state. He can still experience her. She's out there, but in what form of creation has she become?
It's a little bit hopeful.
Yeah.
Right? And if anybody's listened to a lot of my other stories, this blind man shows up as this like mysterious character, usually at the end. So I have a bit of an origin story here about like where he comes from and like why would a godlike being show up as a blind man?
Ooh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, the truth.
The truth tingles.
Right? And like what is their purpose and intent behind it? So, I love this idea of having these complicated characters, right? Who's good, who's bad, who's trying to anyway. So it's coming together.
That's really neat. And again, like the state of contemplation, right? Like I think we're all in that state of contemplation on a regular basis, but we've been so conditioned. We've kind of deactivated from that conscious thought on a regular basis, but it's there, right? And I love this because it's like you're inviting people to be like, hey, like be conscious of it.
Right?
Go into these places. How did that make you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Imagine something different, whether you are more intensely, on the masculine energy side, or if you are a little more on the feminine side and foaming and present, like sometimes a little purpose is wonderful. Right? So
Yeah, they each have their positives, right? And like you talked about, like the greatest strengths often are also our greatest weaknesses. So finding the balance of both, being in that dance together.
I love it. Yeah, there you go. We'll end it on this visual of a dance. So may you enjoy the dance, whatever that means to you. Join me each week as a new chapter unfolds. What worlds will we explore next? What gods and monsters will we find? What part of yourself will awaken? Only one way to find out.